Hello and welcome to the latest installment of My Dad Listens to This. I'm Juliet the daughter.
That must make me Kevin the dad.
Why, yes, it must. And this week, we are listening to, is it officially the best of them, or?
Yeah, it's a best of.
We're listening to the best of Steely Dan. Now, some of you may be thinking, why Steely Dan? Well, I'll tell you folks, recently on Spotify, because I don't pay for Spotify Premium, there's been an ad for a greatest yacht rock of all time concert. And the music they were playing in that ad was absolute garbage. So I said to Dad, I want to see if I can find a yacht rock group where their music doesn't suck as much as the music in the ad. So he picked Steely Dan. So Dad, what do we need to know?
Well, first we're gonna do the origins of yacht rock, and then we'll go right into Steely Dan.
Mm-hmm.
Yacht rock is another name for soft rock that was cranked out roughly from 1975 to 1984. The term, though, didn't exist until 2005, thanks to one J.D. Reisner and his online video series of the same name, yacht rock. The term was used to connote a stereotypical yuppie yacht owner enjoying smooth music while sailing. And yes, the songs can have nautical references in them. The ultimate yacht rock song then would be Sailing by Christopher Cross. A case could be made for Escape, the Pina Colada song,
That
though
sounds like it.
it's not as nautical. You can find all 12 episodes of the history of yacht rock on YouTube. They're about 5 minutes each long, and they are hilarious. However, if you're of a certain age, you might not get a lot of the humor.
I watched the first 2 episodes, and I can safely say, because I'm not steeped enough in the genre yet, most of the jokes went over my head.
Yeah, I can get that. And your host is Hollywood Steve Huey. Now, in 2014, AllMusic's Matt Collier came up with the key defining rules of yacht rock. Keep it smooth, even when it grooves, with more emphasis on the melody than on the beat. Keep the emotions light, even when the sentiment turns sad, as is so often the case in the world of these sensitive yacht rocksmen. Always keep it catchy, no matter how modest or deeply buried in the track list the tune happens to be. Now, the biggest yacht rock acts, in my opinion, would be Steely Dan, Hall & Oates, Kenny Loggins, Christopher Cross, Fleetwood Mac, and Toto.
Really? Fleetwood Mac?
Fleetwood Mac is considered yacht rock.
What? Oh, wow. How do you think the band would feel about that?
I really don't know. I mean, some of these bands embrace it, some of them
Don't.
don't. It depends on the band. And I got to give a special shout out to one of my favorite bands just because of the name, Pablo Cruz. Okay, and while I was doing research for this podcast, I found out there's a subgenre which I was not aware of.
Boat rock?
Yacht soul.
What? Oh, okay. What are examples of
Members
this?
include Stevie Wonder, Kool and the Gang, but only from 1979 to 1987
Okay.
when they defunkified, Earth, Wind and Fire, and believe it or not,
Okay.
Michael Jackson.
Okay, Michael, I could see.
However,
However,
there is one man, one entity, if you will, one yacht rock god who permeates the genre.
who?
Without him, I truly believe yacht rock would not exist.
Okay, I'm gonna guess in my head.
And that man, of course, is Michael McDonald.
Oh, not who I was guessing. I don't even know who that is.
Doobie Brother, solo artist, background singer, duet partner. He sang with James Ingram and also Patti LaBelle. The man was an enormous influence. He is the center of the yacht rock universe. If you were to do a Venn diagram, all the circles will converge on him. Now, yacht rock is available as a seasonal station on Sirius XM, but you can listen to it year-round on the SXM app. And I remember on one of our Berkshire trips, your mom's car crapped out on Route 146 somewhere in Massachusetts.
Yes.
And we had to get 3As to come and tow the car and take us home. And the guy said, for safety purposes, he could only take 2 of us in his cab.
So it was me and Mom in the cab.
No, eventually
Oh,
he
right.
took all 3 of us. You had to sit in my lap, and I held on to you for dear life.
Thanks, Dad.
You're welcome. And what station did the driver have on the long drive home?
Yacht rock?
Yep, and I thought I was going to lose my mind.
Was it all bad?
Pretty much.
Oh.
There's even a book by Greg Prato called The Yacht Rock Book. an oral history of the soft, smooth sounds of the 70s and 80s. And yes, I read it. And it was kind of actually interesting because I could just read about the bands and didn't have to hear the music. So it was pretty good.
Yeah, straight off.
There are also revival concerts, which you will never see me at, so don't bother looking at for me. And there are even yacht rock tribute bands, and one of them, Boathouse Row, is coming to the stadium in Woonsocket, and you will not see me at that show as well. Having said all that, we can now move on to perhaps the best and most subversive of all the yacht rock bands, Steely Dan.
What do we need to know?
Donald Fagen and Walter Becker met at Bard College in Annandale-on-the-Hudson in New York, also home of Jean Grey from the X-Men. That's because Chris Claremont went to Bard College, which is at Annandale. They played in various jazz and progressive rock bands. One of them was the Bad Rock Group, with Chevy Chase on the drums.
Really?
Really,
That
yep.
Chevy Chase?
That Chevy Chase, yep. Fagen and Becker started composing songs in hopes of being a brill-building songwriting team. They also joined Jay and the Americans as touring band members from 1970 to 1971. They got a big break when, of all people, Barbara Streisand recorded their song I Mean to Shine.
Really?
They also met producer Gary Katz, who signed them to ABC Dunhill as songwriters. Katz suggested they form a band so they could perform their own songs. He also produced all their albums up to Gaucho. They recruited guitarists Denny Dias, Jeff Skunk Baxter.
Skunk?
Skunk.
Well, where'd that come from?
I have no idea. I could not find an explanation, though I'm sure it's out there.
Okay.
Maybe he wasn't much for...
Showering?
Could be, yeah.
Anyway,
Jeff Skunk Baxter, future Doobie Brother, and, believe it or not, advisor of the Congress and the Pentagon on ballistic missile defense.
really?
Really?
Wow.
Yep. Drummer Jim Harder and keyboardist vocalist David Palmer. Donald Fagen also played keyboards and sang while Walter Becker played bass. Eventually, Becker would go on to play guitar. They called themselves Steely Dan, which was the name of a dildo from beat writer Bad William Tell impersonator William Burroughs' book Naked Lunch. Stay away from the beats, kids, that's all I can say. And to quote Nelson Muntz, I can think of two things wrong with that title. Their debut album, Can't Buy a Thrill, came out in November of 1972. They got two hits, Do It Again and Reeling in the Years, both sung by Donald Fagen. The subsequent tour was not a success. The band was under-rehearsed, and the audiences didn't care much for them. David Palmer left after the tour. In 1973, they released Countdown to Ecstasy, which got critical raves, but there weren't any hits. And a tour didn't help. Pretzel Logic came out in 1974, and the Dan were back in the top 10 with Ricky Don't Lose That Number.
And then everything went to shit?
Nope.
Oh.
After completing the supporting tour, Fagen and Becker stopped touring, and Steely Dan became a studio band. This allowed them to hire whoever they wanted to play on their albums, the creme de la creme of studio musicians, or, according to some critics, the hackiest of the hacks. Throughout the band's career, up until 1980 anyway, there were four constants: Fagen, Becker, Gary Katz, and engineer Roger the Immortal Nichols. Nichols got his nickname from two incidents. One, he once engineered for 24 hours straight.
Whoa.
Not with the same bands, but like running throughout the studio. And two, he survived an electrical mishap in the studio that should have killed him.
What happened?
I wasn't sure on the details, but apparently, two wires and...
Booma booma?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Being a studio band also allowed the four of them to be as persnickety as they wanted to be, sometimes having musicians go through 30 or 40 takes.
Ooh.
Now, one story from the Rock Snob's Dictionary, which I highly recommend you read. During the Gaucho sessions, Fagen put engineers through 300 mixes of one song. He eventually settled on take number 274, but came back to the studio a few days later to fix a single bass note.
Jeez.
Yep. Katie Lied came out in 1975, and The Royal Scam in 1976. Asia, their most popular album, came out in 77. It sold 2 million copies in the U.S. alone, and in 2010 would be inducted into the Library of Congress's National Recording Registry. They also recorded the song for the movie FM in 1978. The movie tanked, but the soundtrack sold 1 million copies.
Oh, there you go.
Gaucho came out in 1980. The fourth edition of the Rolling Stone Record Guide said Gaucho was so slick it slid right off the turntable and into the wastebasket. That's smooth. In 1981, Donald Fagen and Walter Becker went their own ways, amicably. Becker moved to Maui and became an avocado rancher, which just sounds too good to be true. And Fagen put out his first solo album in 1982, The Nightfly, which did pretty well. His next solo album would be 11 years later, 1993's Kamakiriad, produced by Walter Becker. They teamed up for a tour to support that album. Steely Dan was back, baby! On the road, anyway.
Oh.
In 1994, Becker would put out 11 tracks of Whack, co-produced by...
Who?
Yep.
Who?
Donald Fagen.
Oh.
In 2000, as Steely Dan, they put out Two Against Nature. They produced it themselves with Roger Nichols back as engineer. It won Album of the Year at the Grammys. Go figure. Probably should have won it for Asia. They were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2001. They put out Everything Must Go in 2003. During that album's recording in 2002, they fired Roger Nichols. No explanation given.
Whoa.
Yeah. More tours and more solo albums followed. Walter Becker died of esophageal cancer in 2017.
Oh, ow.
Lots of smoking. Donald Fagen said he'd carry on, now calling his group the Steely Dan Band. Soon after Becker's death, his widow and estate sued Donald Fagen for control of 50% of the band's shares.
Whoa.
Fagen filed a countersuit saying, way back in 1972, the band laid out plans that band members leaving or dying relinquish their shares of the band's output to the surviving members.
Did he have written proof of this?
I have no idea.
Or did he just pull it out of his butt?
I'm thinking butt pulling.
Yeah.
Fagen wanted to retire the Steely Dan name, but promoters convinced him otherwise. As of 2021, he was still reeling in the lawsuits.
Oh, boy.
Tip of the topper to the AV Club for that line. As for me, I'd always been aware of Steely Dan by the radio hits and the deeper tracks that WHJY or WBRU would play.
R.I.P. WBRU.
I'm pretty sure I picked up Showbiz Kids, The Steely Dan Story, 1972 to 1980, which is the album we'll be picking apart, when it came out in 2000. It has 33 tracks in chronological order, remastered by Roger Nichols. The song credits are mind-numbing. They're very 70s, and then they start by listing who's playing the guitar solos. The CD booklet is 16 pages long.
Whoa.
5 of those pages are wasted on a hipster doofus essay in the guise of a memo written by Michael Phelan to Roger Nichols. I read it once. I never have to read it again. A band history or even lyrics would have been a much better use of those pages. A lot of the other pages are devoted to the song credits,
Okay.
which, like I said, are mind-numbing.
Or they could have even put photos in there.
They did.
Okay.
We won't be reviewing all 33 songs.
No, we do it
Just-
forever.
Just a bit over half of them. Kind of a best to the best, if you will, according to me anyway. One thing about Steely Dan, they've always had a reputation for obscurantist lyrics, which means they deliberately prevent the details from being known. And that's why they hired studio musicians. They knew these guys would be able to put across the lyrics to the listeners in a tasteful manner, if you will, or non-combative manner, or non-confrontational. But thanks to the interwebs, there are a lot of forums and websites out there with a lot of theories as to what the songs are about.
Twitter.
So many theories. So many. And I have my own, and I'm sure you have your own. So let's jump right in.
Okay, first track. Do It Again.
Again?
Again. Starts out with a great beat, and the opening notes remind me of the theme to Law and Order. You can hear it, can't you?
I can hear it.
Yep. And as the notes progressed, I realized I'd heard this song before as they went up and up and up. Dun, dun. And as the song went on, I realized the point of this is to just be chill and to vibe. You're not supposed to listen to the lyrics or analyze them. Just bob your head along to the music and chill out. Who cares about this guy's multiple troubles? Is this bad? Well, no, not necessarily. There's some great guitar playing here, and if the playing was boring, then I'd definitely say this was a bad song. But no, the playing is great and reminds me almost of a jazz improv session. This is great for music at a wedding when people just want a chill song to jive to after doing all the line dances.
See, the Dan got you right out of the gate. It's the music. People, really don't pay attention to the lyrics.
No, but when you do, it's like, holy shit.
Oh, it is, yeah. Now, this is the opening track from Can't Buy a Thrill. There are 3 scenarios, and they're all in second person. You killed a man for stealing your water, but the hangman isn't hanging, so you're back on the street. Good day for you. 2, you've been 2-timed, and you know she'll have you on your knees the next day just begging. 3, you deny you're a gambler, but guess who's back in Vegas? With a marked deck from the sounds of it, but you've got to come clean and put your cards on the table. In the land of milk and honey anyway, which could be Israel or the United States from the immigrant's point of view. But Vegas, maybe if you're winning, I guess.
Yeah, but if you're losing, no.
Yeah, but in each case, in each scenario, you're just going to do it again. It's like no lessons learned. The way the song starts, though, you'd swear you were listening to Santana.
Yeah, I get to that a little bit later.
And I bet a lot of people thought that until Donald Fagen opens his mouth. It's like a gotcha. And this song clocks in at close to 6 minutes, but it's never felt that long to me.
No, me neither. Next track, Dirty Work. Somehow this song is even more chill. Stoners must love this music. I can see 2 people listening to this while smoking blunts or cigarettes to decompress, especially at the end of a long day. We've all had days where we've had enough, and listening to this guy, you're like, yeah, you tell him. But you don't have the energy to rage, so you just lie there and let the vibe wash over you. Think Punk if it had a Snickers. You get where I'm coming from, though, right?
This is also from Can't Buy a Thrill. David Palmer sang this, and he sounds like the most defeated guy in the world.
Yeah, he's like, whatever.
Yeah, it's like he's the backup for when her husband's out of town, and he realizes he's a fool to do her dirty work. He doesn't want to do it anymore, but he's already done it 1,000 times before, and he'll probably do it 1,000 more. And you can just hear the misery in David Palmer's voice. And I think if Donald Fagen had sung this one, he just could not have pulled it off.
Next track, Reelin' in the Years. Okay, this song rocks a little more, and now I get why this is called yacht rock and not chill beats to study to. I like this song better than the last 2 simply because it grooves harder. I think I'll understand the message of this song more when I'm older and in my 40s, so I'll let Dad elaborate about the message of this song some more. But I love the way I love the music way more in this one, and the harmonies are great.
This is also from Can't Buy a Thrill. And ooh, what a kiss off of a song. Hence the bouncy music to make it all go down easy.
Bouncy, bouncy. No, not that one. See our Halloween episode for that.
Or not. Yeah. The first verse smacks of desperation. Donald tells the kiss-offee they're trying to grab a piece of something they think is going to last, but it's not. They wouldn't even know a diamond if they held it in their hand. Ouch. And throughout the song, he can't understand any of this other person's values, like they've lived life all wrong in his eyes. As for reeling in the years, I don't know. Maybe it's this person trying to hold on to whatever memories they can, but to what purpose, I don't know. Catchy song, though.
Next track, only a fool would say that. This was where I was thinking Santana. Because now we've got music that may have been influenced by Latin music with the maracas, percussion, and groove. Is this as close as Steely Dan got to being political? Because for the second time I thought, these lyrics feel like they come from a punk or alt-rock song without the musical oomph. But that's not a bad thing because the musicianship is so good that I'm engaged by the music and the vocals. And again, that's the point of yacht rock. No critical thinking, only vibes. And
Who wants another Mai Tai?
Me! And I enjoyed the vibes of this one. And yet, I'm not at the point where I will say I'm a fan. Although that laugh in Spanish at the end was an unexpected twist. I didn't expect that from them. As for Kizzy Crawford, her performance is beautiful, and using those harmonies throughout is heaven for the ears. The fact that video doesn't have more views on YouTube is a crime. I'm going to say it's better than the original because of the vocal gymnastics, and if it was on Spotify, I would save it, because she is on Spotify. But is this song on Spotify? Nope.
Bastards.
I know, absolute bastards.
Okay, this is also from Can't Buy a Thrill. And I always imagined this song was about someone Donald knew who he thought was pretty smart and practical, never imagining in a million years they were a naive optimist. He just can't believe it. I heard it was you talking about a world where all was free, but it just couldn't be, and only a fool would say that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I always thought. But there's a theory out there.
Oh, yeah?
Yep, that Becker and Fagan wrote this song about John Lennon. And imagine.
Oh, what, he got all hippy-dippy?
They never mentioned John by name.
Ooh.
But if you read the lyrics, there's enough in them to make you think that theory is dead on.
There's some context clues, folks.
They tell John to put himself in the man in the street shoes, working 9 to 5, dragging his ass home half alive. Turns on the TV and sees John singing about imagining no possessions. John was not a Steely Dan fan after that.
Well, no shit.
Paul was, though. And see, I'm just going to rant a little here because I think it's kind of maybe a political song in that this happens a lot where the rich or celebrities or both are kind of at a remove from the everyday world for so long that there's a disconnect with the rest of us.
I agree, especially if you go on some of their Twitter pages. Like someone once asked, I think it was Gina Rodriguez from Jane the Virgin. So it was definitely somebody who was trying for help. She's like, I'm trying to pay off my student loans. Do you know where you could point to a Latina in need? And instead of like organizing a GoFundMe, she was like, oh, you should contact the person at college admissions or something like that. And everyone's like, that's not what she was asking you for. Like, you do know that, right?
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially when they try to foist their pet causes on us. Like the most amusing one to me is, hey, you need to reduce your carbon footprint, like they do when they're flying on a private jet to some green conference to reduce the carbon footprint. Like, ever hear of Zoom?
Or like,
just stay home.
In 2016, one of the Kardashians posted a video of them sitting by their fireplace, and she was like, 2016, I think it's going to be a year of change and stuff. And that was it. That was the whole video, and it's like, wow, that's enlightening of you there, Socrates.
Hey, stuff can cover a lot of stuff.
Especially if you're rich and you can afford stuff to buy.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So Whole Foods used to play this on their Whole Foods station, but not the Steely Dan version, though. 99% sure it was Kizzy Crawford's version.
Oh, okay.
Because I was doing so much searching, and I thought, this has got to be the one. There was one that came out in 2000 by a band whose name I cannot remember, but it wasn't them. And it was from the soundtrack from the Farrelly Brothers movie, Me, Myself, and Irene. Mm-hmm. And the whole soundtrack is just all Steely Dan covers. But yeah, Kizzy Crawford's cover is just great.
Very good. Next track, My Old School. Woo, we're starting with a piano, folks. I'd love to hear a country song cover of this. This story is right up their alley. And in this one, you can think critically because the lyrics are so specific to the telling of the story. One of the backup vocalists sounds like Sting, and it made me wonder if some of his Police tracks were influenced by Steely Dan. The instrumental here also does some great things with the guitars, horns, bass, and drums. These were highly competent musicians.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. This is from Countdown Ecstasy. Now, this song is based on a drug bust that happened at Bard College in May 1969. 44 people, including Donald Fagen, were arrested. And those 44 people accounted for 10% of Bard's student population.
Wow.
The local assistant DA back then was one G. Gordon Liddy, Daddy G in the song. Apparently a female acquaintance betrayed Fagen and others to Liddy.
Oh.
And I actually found the front page of the local newspaper that had the whole article, and they misspelled Donald Fagen's last name. In the song, Fagen says, when California tumbles into the sea, that'll be the next time he goes back to Annandale, where Bard College is located. But he did go back in 1985 to receive an honorary doctorate in the arts. And it's all so catchy, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
It is.
Next track, Ricky, Don't Lose That Number. Simple story, one night stand, partner is leaving, other person says, hey, if you want a good time again, don't lose that number. And as soon as I heard the chorus, I recognized this song. This guy is very confident putting himself out there like this. He's not coming across as a jerk because there's an undercurrent of vulnerability as he begs her not to lose it and starts thinking of other stuff they could do if she decides to hang out.
This is from Pretzel Logic, and this is pretty straightforward for Steely Dan anyway. Donald Fagen had a crush on writer/poet/artist Erica Ricky Ducournay, whilst they were both attending Bard College. They met at a party there, and even though she was married, he still gave her his number. She said she was tempted to call, but didn't. And the song makes the topic more mysterious. The arrangement is a big part of that, especially the chimes. Ricky was Steely Dan's biggest hit, going all the way to number 4 on the Billboard singles chart. And people had theories that, oh, number, that means it's a joint, which...
Really?
Yeah, marijuana's like joints are called numbers, like Bob Dylan's Rainy Day Women, number 12 and 35. Everybody must get stoned. Through the whole...
No, I think it's a phone number.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically what it was, but people thought, no, it can't be that straightforward. But guess what? It was.
Next track, any major dude will tell you, okay, if you Google a squonk, you get the most heartbreaking picture. At first, I didn't like this song because of the delivery of, I've never seen you looking so bad, my dude. But this is basically, don't worry, be happy, and let it be. Things will get better soon. And then, I had a realization about this whole album. This would be a great soundtrack for Thanksgiving dinner. Because everyone is so blissed out on food that they just need to chill. Perfect for a tryptophan hangover from Turkey. Could you hear it?
I could hear it.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't think you'd be mad either.
This is from Pretzel Logic. Donald seems to be trying to comfort a friend whose superfine mind has come undone. How 70s is that? But there's also a wise-assness to Donald's sympathy in that he makes it a point to tell said friend that he, Donald, is the shit. Any major dude with half a heart surely will tell you, my friend. Any minor world that breaks apart falls together again. When the demon is at your door in the morning, won't be there no more. Any major dude, like myself, will tell you. Now, you may be asking about that line which you refer to. Have you ever seen a squonk's tears? What is a squonk?
Some creature.
Wikipedia to the rescue.
Yep.
A squonk is a mythical animal that lives in northern Pennsylvania. It cries all the time because it realizes it's so hideous.
Oh.
Now, the thing is, it cries so much that it leaves a trail of tears, which makes it easy for hunters to find. And when it's cornered, the squonk cries so much that it makes itself dissolve into a puddle of tears.
Holy crap.
Anyway, that's how much Donald cares about his friend. And, like, he's just heavy on the self-gloss in this song. It's like, yeah, I feel sorry for you, but hey, props to me for feeling sorry for you.
Wow, pat yourself on the back there, bud.
Now, hey, on August 26th, Johnstown, Pennsylvania celebrates Squonkapalooza.
Squonkapalooza?
I found the website. And basically, they celebrate the squonk and other creatures that fall under, this is a study, cryptozoology.
Oh, like fake animals.
Yes.
Cool. Squonkapalooza.
And also, the band Genesis have a song called Squonk on their 1976 album, A Trick of the Tail.
I can't get over that name, Squonkapalooza. That's just
Squonkapalooza.
hilarious.
Yeah, you can palooza anything.
You kind of can't. There was Elmo Palooza for Sesame Street.
Yes, it was.
Next track, Black Friday. Okay, we got another song that rocks a little bit more and puts the rock in yacht rock. I guess this song is about when the shit's about to go down, but you're prepared for this. And there's a seriousness here due to the guitar and the tone of the singer's voice. Once again, excellent playing.
You're prepared, but you're also a bastard because you're prepared. Because this is from Katie Lyde, and this has to do with the Jay Gould, Jim Fisk gold scheme of 1869. Basically, the two of them, who were railroad barons, figured out how to corner the gold market. New York had $20 million in available gold. Nationally, there was $100 million in reserves, but they needed access to President Ulysses Grant to make the scheme work. They posed as very concerned rich guys. They were the latter, but not the former, who could save the gold market. They needed the government to stay out of it, though, for it to work. Now, Fisk sent Grant a letter confirming Grant's support. Grant, however, did not reply, which Fisk and Gould took as a yes.
Oh, no.
The two of them bought and bought and bought and drove up the price of gold. Grant found out about the scheme, and on Friday, September 24th, he put the government gold reserve up for sale, driving Gould and Fisk out of business. However, they both got out relatively unscathed. The whole affair became known as
What?
Black Friday.
Oh, Black Friday, yeah, doy.
And you can learn more about this at unrememberedhistory.com. As for the song, it's an investor who made a killing in this scheme. When Black Friday comes, he'll be catching the window jumpers, collect everything he's owed, and hit the road before his friends find out. He'll be on the other side of the world in Muswell Brook, Australia, just feeding the kangaroos. He's going to stake his claim, but since he skipped town, he's going to have to change his name, probably to No Good Son of a Bitch Bastard. And there's so much menace in this music. Now, in the Rolling Stone record guide, they said they thought, wow, this is a song about Bill Clinton before Bill Clinton was Bill Clinton. And I could kind of see that with the verse about he's going to dig himself a hole and he's going to lie in it until he satisfies his soul.
Next,
Philandering, cigars,
next track.
Epstein.
Bad sneakers. You're not wrong. Doing some Googling, this song is basically Steely Dan's version of Help. Apparently, the lead singer felt fame taking its toll and he transcribed it in song. Also, apparently, this is about washed-up New Yorkers in L.A. If that's the case, he's had enough of L.A. and the coke and wants to go home. Listening to this song, I could hear the Carole King influence with the piano and the vocals, and I could hear her record this song 100%. I'd love to hear her rendition.
I could definitely see it. Yep. This is also from Katie Lied. The 5 names Donald Fagen can't stand to hear are his, Walter Becker's, and the 3 other guys who made up the first incarnation of Steely Dan. Steely Dan, excuse me. The Steely Dan band. Anyway, like you said, he had moved to Los Angeles from New York and hated it. I mean, just a culture shock. But that's where the band was based, and I guess he was thinking of quitting. And the ladies talking are either the local prostitutes or the nurses in rehab that Fagen may have been in at the time. The term frozen rain is either methadone or cocaine. The fearsome excavation on Magnolia Boulevard was a 15-foot deep hole and wide hole the city dug in the summer of 1974, and it took up most of the right lane in front of a North Hollywood apartment. And it's also looked on as like, well, they're also digging this hole to put up my mansion. Because you're out there, what are you going to do? He's so alone and wonders when he'll be sent home from rehab. Home could be New York, where he can wear bad sneakers and drink his pina colada, and no one cares. Whereas in LA, it was probably trying to be as hip as possible. And the ditch in the valley that they're digging just for him could be his grave if he doesn't succeed at rehab.
Next track.
And,
Oops, sorry.
And again, all delivered with mellow, happy music. And yes, we get the king of yacht rock, Michael McDonald, on backing vocals.
Yep. Next track. Dr. Wu.
Doctor Who?
Dr. Wu.
Doctor Who?
Probably another one of the most chill cries for help I've ever heard. The singer details his journey of addiction and finding hope again, and the arrangement is simple with piano and drums so that the lyrics can stand out, except for the saxophone solo, which is excellent as always. And he enters a spiral towards the end that's really well done, with the repetition of one lyric that maintains the same level of intensity, reminiscent of Love is the Drug by Grace Jones. Very powerful.
This is from Katie Lied, and this song can be interpreted in so many ways. Like you said, you got the drug thing going on. Dr. Wu was either a real doctor, which he may have been, which I'll touch upon in a minute, or another name for a drug, which I have no idea what it would be. Or maybe Katie is the drug. Or maybe she's trying to get the user clean. Katie tried, I was halfway crucified, I was on the other side of tomorrow. You walked in and my life began again. At one point they sing a song and Fagen refers to it again later when he goes off searching for the taste. Drugs again. He finds Katie and she lied. You can see it in her eyes, which means she probably took his drugs. She wanted Dr. Wu for herself. So he got betrayed. No happy ending this, but pleasantly delivered. But there is also a theory that there's a real Dr. Wu, which supposedly Donald Fagen's mother was seeing because she had some sort of heart condition. And there's kind of a local Boston tie with WCVB Channel 5 reporter Janet Wu saying that Dr. Wu, that's her father.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Be nice if it's true. Don't know how true it is. I mean, because the interwebs don't lie, do they?
Well, Next track, Kid Charlemagne. I just realized that the singer for this song Reminds you of that guy who sang for Cream when Eric Clapton didn't feel like it.
Jack Bruce?
Yeah, only I like the Steely Dan guy a lot more, less of an asshole vibe. So I wasn't as engaged with this song because it didn't grab me like the previous one, and it was the first Steely Dan song, in my opinion, that felt long. And since it didn't do anything for me, I don't have much to say. Back to you, Dad.
I love this song.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites just because of the beat. Anyway, this is from The Royal Scam, and this tells the story of San Francisco-based LSD chemist Owsley Stanley. He was one of the first private individuals to make the stuff, and apparently he was really, really good at it. His stuff was pure, no kerosene laced in it to thin it out. I guess they could do that anyway. But eventually, like all things, the 60s ended. His patrons left, his lower-end friends are dead, and the hippies joined the 9-to-5 world, and he's been rendered obsolete. Back in 67, he did get arrested when his car ran out of gas, hence the lines, "Is there gas in the car? Yes, there's gas in the car." No gas in the car. You make for go to jail. Eventually, Stanley would go on to work for the Grateful Dead. Oh boy, there's a career opportunity. As a roadie, but then as a sound engineer. He moved to Australia in 1982 and died there in a car accident in 2011. And he indirectly gave us this funky song, which I really like. For me, sometimes it's just the beat.
Next track, Don't Take Me Alive. Okay, is this from a concept album? Or is it just a concept song?
No, it's not a concept. Royal Scam, no, not a concept album.
Okay. This is a yacht rock version of We Have You Surrounded, Come Out With Your Hands Up.
Oh, like Arrested Development.
Which episode?
The first one when they got the father?
Oh, yeah, where they're on the yacht.
Yes.
Literally, okay. And to state...
Oh, I wonder if this is playing in the background.
There's a good chance I may have committed some light treason. Okay, and to state an opinion, this might be the most badass Steely Dan song on the whole album because the passion of the singer matches the serious undercurrent of the instruments.
Oh, yeah.
I would have loved to have seen a music video for this if one existed.
Just, that first episode of Arrested Development.
Yeah, it's in the banana stand. Oh, man.
Oh, I gotta seriously rewatch that.
Anyway.
Music here, right?
Yeah, music.
My turn.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
This is also from The Royal Scam. And this seems pretty straightforward. Some crime has gone really wrong, so a criminal has taken a luckless pedestrian as a hostage. He tells us he's a bookkeeper's son, so that, he may not be that tough. But then again, he's got a case of dynamite and he could hold out all night with his hostage. Because I guess in the morning he'd probably be sleepy. Also, it seems like he's not all there. I hear my inside, the mechanized hum of another world. And it seems like he wants to commit suicide by police or SWAT team. Don't Take Me Alive. And yes, again, the Dans, they keep the whole thing very catchy. And just fun fact, bookkeeper and bookkeeping are the only words in the English language where you get 3 sets of double letters in a row.
I have one quick Arrested Development story in the next song.
Okay.
So when, I think it was my junior or senior prom was approaching, I posted on Facebook, this is going to be the teachers when we're all dancing at prom. And it was a compilation of every time George Bluth was in prison and someone said, no touching! Anyway, okay. Haitian divorce. Have you ever known a couple who was doomed from the start?
No, not offhand, but give me a minute.
Well, that's what happens with Babs and Clean Willie. The wedding is a disaster, she books it, shacks up with a guy, and then returns home. Again, excellent playing here. And an enjoyable story, but one where I was paying more attention to the guitar more than anything else. As for me, have I ever known a couple was doomed from the start? Well, lately, I've had a knack for when, if there's an announcement where there's a celebrity couple, and the internet's like, oh my god, they finally got together, and I'm like, no, they're gonna break up. A couple months later, guess what happens? They broke up. Yeah, and people are like, oh my god, who could have seen this coming? And I'm like, me.
Huh.
Yeah.
Well, I've never been to a wedding where people in the pews were placing bets as to how long the thing was going to last. But there was one where I was shocked that they got divorced because they had dated for 10 years, then they got married, and then maybe 2 years later, divorced.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was just such a surprise. But maybe something in those first 10 years.
Or maybe maybe it's like one of those things where it's like couples are meant to date, but they're not meant to get married.
That could be.
Yeah, that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so Babs and Clean Willie. What a couple. I wonder how Clean Willie got his name. Maybe he just got out of rehab.
Let's not think about that.
Okay. So much in love. The preacher's face turned red, and I can just imagine they were just like going at it before.
Like Gomez and Morticia in that scene in the Addams Family movie where they're at the auction.
Yes.
And we don't see what they're doing, but the auctioneer's just so grossed out.
Yeah. But soon enough, it was over. Babs goes to Haiti to get a Haitian divorce, which was a real thing. Basically a quickie divorce. Only one party needed to file the papers to make it happen.
Really? Wow.
Yep. So while she's there, she goes to a hotel. She has a zombie at the hotel bar and tells a cab driver to take her to where the music's playing. She meets a local Charlie. They dance vertically, then horizontally. And I love the line, now we dolly back, now we fade to black, because we don't need to see this.
No.
But Babs goes back to Clean Willie, tearful reunion in the USA, and puts those memories behind her. But 9 months later,
Uh-oh.
something wrong here, as Goofy would say. Some babies grow in a peculiar way. It changed, it grew. Somebody knew. Semi-mojo. Who's this kinky so-and-so? Babs is the mother. But Clean Willie, he sure ain't the dad. Uh-oh. And once again, Papa Doc Duvalier dangles that Haitian divorce in front of them. All delivered with great fake reggae. And it's easily one of my favorite Steely Dan songs.
Next track, The Fez. Okay, if you took the music away and just looked at the lyrics, I would have said this song was about a man whose one thing in bed is that he has to wear a Persian fez for some reason. It's also hilarious when you think about how in Doctor Who, Matt Smith's doctor always wore a fez. Always. But then we go into an instrumental, and I think that this song could have just honestly been an instrumental without the lyrics, because by itself it's beautiful and we don't really need anything else.
Yeah, it's a great music.
Yep.
This is also from The Royal Scam. Okay, now, on the interwebs, a lot of people say this is a song about safe sex, fez being another word for condom.
Okay.
But I don't buy that,
Yes.
because I have never, ever heard the condom being referred to as a fez at all.
Me neither.
Listeners out there, let me know if you've ever heard that.
Plus, also, as a hat, the fez is a tiny hat. It doesn't cover the whole head, so that wouldn't really work.
Just a tip. Anyway,
Sorry, children. To quote Uncle Roger.
I think I always thought it was about some BS spiritual leader who's seducing a haughty apostle. He wants to be her holy man. The two will become one, and she will achieve total consciousness, or some other nonsense. But he's got to have his fez on when they commune. Keyboard player Paul Griffin got a songwriting credit for coming up with some of the melody. And I love the groove in this song. It's pretty close to disco.
Next track, Deacon Blues. My first note, 7 minutes. I was like, Violet, oh no, we're doomed. Okay, I do like the lyric, make love to these women languid and bittersweet. That's pretty great. I wonder if this song is autobiographical, using music to pour out his shitty life. But my thing is, we already had a couple of songs that did that pretty well in less time. Maybe he just had some stuff he needed to get off his chest, but I was kind of sick of it, and I just wanted him to get some help already. Although, I could listen to that instrumental around the 4-minute mark, along with the saxophone, for hours on end. Again, it would have been interesting if we just had an instrumental, because the music itself has chill jazz vibes with the horns and piano. Or maybe lyrics at the beginning, a jazzy, bluesy instrumental in the middle, and lyrics coming back at the end. Because the lyrics throughout aren't engaging enough for me with this song.
Okay, this is from Asia, which is their yachtiest yacht rock album. Fagan and Becca also stretched out musically, incorporating jazz into the usual Steely Dan mix. So much so that in the Showbiz Kids booklet, sax players are now getting the solo credits.
Oh, good.
Asia only had 7 songs, 5 of them clocking in at over 5 minutes, with the title track being 8. Deacon Blues is the second longest at 7:37, and it's never felt that long to me, though. The character in the song is based on Fager and Becca's dreams of being jazz artists, living somewhere in suburban New York, which just isn't really jazzy. But this was as close as they were ever going to come, and hey, they made it happen.
Yes.
The guy in the song doesn't make it, but he has his dreams, like you said about, making love to the women and all this. He has his dreams, but that's all that they are. He'll learn to work the saxophone, and you figure, well, he's just never going to get around to it because it's probably just easier to have the dreams than to put in the work. He hasn't even got as far as learning any instrument yet, but he'll play what he feels, drink whiskey all night long, and die behind the wheel like some romanticized jazz musician death of the non-heroin kind. But darn it, he wants a name for being a loser, which I think is kind of weird. He says the University of Alabama, a football powerhouse, is called the Crimson Tide, so I'll call him Deacon Blues, which is kind of ridiculous when you think about it. Why should losers get nicknames unless it's like a really good nickname? Lollapalooza. Loser. Anyway. I always thought that those first lines, these are the days of the expanding man. I always thought expanding man would be a great name for a Steely Dan tribute band.
Expanding Nam sounds like an operation in the Vietnam War.
Oh, I'm going to expand it to the rest of Asia.
Next track, Josie. There was one brief
Nope.
What's next?
Peg?
Oh, Peg. Sorry, I mixed up the order. Okay, next track, Peg.
Sorry, Peg.
First, hi, Peg. Okay, is this guy a superfan or a stalker? You decide, listeners. Personally, I think it's too wholesome to be a stalker, and this is just a fan who has a crush, or maybe someone who works with Peg that has a crush. This track sounds the most like it could have been a theme song for the lead woman in a sitcom. It probably wouldn't have hurt Steely Dan with some royalty checks either.
This is from Asia. So Peg is at a photo shoot in L.A. being cheered on by...
Somebody.
A boyfriend?
A
A hanger-on? Because it's kind of like the camera loves you, baby.
Or the photographer.
But it doesn't say what kind of photo shoot this is exactly, though. Could be legit,
Yeah, sure.
but knowing Steely Dan, probably not. There's probably a seedy element to it all. Now, who is Peg, besides our most devoted listener? Donald Fagen said they had a dotted half note, which is 3 beats,
Right.
that needed to be filled, and Peg was short enough to fill it.
Okay.
This is my favorite Steely Dan song. It's so catchy, and it's because of Rick Marotta's drumming, which I just think it's great. I never get tired of hearing this song. Never. There have been times where I played it quite a few times in a row. And yes, that is Michael McDonald, once again, on backing vocals.
Okay, is Josie the next one? Okay. Josie, there was one brief moment in the intro that sounded like music from Mr. Rogers. You'll hear it if you re-listen to it. Local girl comes home and town is excited. Or long-distance girlfriend comes home and friends, family, and boyfriend are at a party. I think this is the first Steely Dan song I thought would be good for a summer party. If someone played this at a wedding or a party, this would be one hell of a niche reference.
This is also from Asia. So fun time gal Josie is coming back home, and everyone's amped up for her return. Well, the guys are anyway. Josie may have been doing time, though. Possibly.
Oh, interesting.
Possibly for
Stuff.
selling her wares. As for the lines, she prays like a Roman with her eyes on fire. For me, it was guessing time, because I thought of Roman as a Roman Catholic.
Yeah, and I'm like, when do we have our eyes on fire?
So she's down on her knees, and I won't say more. It's just a guess. As for the eyes on fire, maybe it's drugs. Maybe it's more of an ancient Roman who'd be looked on as a pagan, so there's that possibility too. Those amoral pagans, they're up for anything. Good catchy song, kind of funky.
Next track, FM. Tribute to FM radio?
We'll find out.
Musically, there is, this is the one that feels least like a Steely Dan song because of how the guitar sounds here. I think my favorite lyric is, the girls don't seem to care what's on, as long as they play till dawn. Nothing but blues and Elvis and somebody else's favorite song. Like, yeah, it's not my favorite music, but it'll do fine for a party.
Yep, this is from the FM soundtrack. And the movie's makers approached Steely Dan about making a song that would be the title track for the movie. So they did.
Okay.
Donald Fagen said if he and Walter Becker had seen the movie first, they probably wouldn't have bothered. The song's subversiveness comes from, well, obviously the two main sources, the music and the lyrics. Most of FM at that time was AOR or classic rock. AOR means album-oriented rock. And this song sounds like anything but that. And also we get the lyric, the girls don't seem to care what's on. Like the music just doesn't matter. Like you said, as long as it's on till dawn, they really don't care. Could be anything. Fagan complains it's nothing but blues and Elvis and, like you said, someone else's favorite song. Not any of the stuff he's into, but hey, it's keeping the ladies happy and that's what's important. There's no funk, no reggae. At that time, FM radio was becoming regimented. DJs had to adhere to playlists. There was no more freeform of play whatever you want. You play like a whole side of an album, or you could play, and basically anything. FM was just wide open until corporate got involved and started buying up stations and saying, okay, these are the 40 classic rock songs you want to play. We don't care how many times you've heard them, how many times they're going to make you sick. This is what the people want. This is what the kids out there who are going to turn into old farts want to hear.
Yeah, sure.
And now, if you listen to, some stations where, HJY, that's all they play, even though at one time they were a lot more diverse. But if you want to hear the diverse stuff, you got to go to one of those HD channels, if those still even exist anymore.
I don't even know what that is.
It was they had peddled something called high definition radio. At Nana's house, she has, the HD TV, where you get, channel 10.1, 10.2. Well, this is the same thing. You got HJY 1, 2, 3, 4, and they would have different formats.
Maybe SiriusXM has kind of taken that over at this point.
I think they've pretty much replaced that. But even SiriusXM, it's just all regimented, which on one hand is fine if you like a particular genre of music. That's all you're going to hear. But there's there's no variety, and I think you need to mix it up. I really do.
Next, final track, Hey 19.
What?
Is this about a May-December relationship?
You are good.
Sounds like it. He doesn't refer to the other person by name, only as Hey 19, so it's safe to assume that's the other person's age. What really freaks his head is that she doesn't know who Aretha Franklin is, which I don't think is referencing her age. I think it means she lives under a rock. Hell, people in my generation know who Aretha is. Would that ever freak your head if Mom didn't know who some big artist was? And would it make you not want to be with her?
No, it's not so much making me not want to be with her, but I'll mention things and she'll say, I've never heard of that. And I'd say, it was amazingly popular in the 80s.
Like what?
How could you have not known that? I can't remember offhand, but I remember there was something to do with chairs.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And then I've mentioned other things, particular songs, and she'll say, I've never heard that. And I'll have to say, this song was so massive. But hey, she was off doing her thing, and that's life.
Well, she kind of had that moment where Auntie didn't, when Christine McVie died, she didn't know a lot about Fleetwood Mac, which Mom was surprised by.
Yeah, it happens.
Anyway, some people have some weird compromises in relationships, but I don't think having different musical tastes is one of them, as long as you don't try to force the other person to like it. And it's kind of fun when you introduce people to new genres and groups. It could also be a cultural difference between Boston and Scarsdale, a song that provokes some interesting questions about relationships.
Okay, this is the only track I picked from Gaucho because it was the biggest hit off that album.
Not Groucho?
No, that would have been good. More about Gaucho later.
Mm-hmm.
And hey, this is not only the final song for our Steely Dan podcast, but it's also the 19th one as well.
Hey, how do you like that?
I made sure that was intentional. And yes, it is a May-December romance that December seems to be regretting. 19 doesn't know who Aretha Franklin is, much less the Soul Survivors, who had one hit in 1967, The Expressway to Your Heart. He realizes that not only can they can't dance together, they can't even talk at all. There's no common ground. And she thinks he's crazy, but he's just growing old. The only things that help maybe both of them get through this are the Corvo Gold and the Fine Colombian. Of course. Musically, Hey 19 and the rest of Gaucho make Asia sound like the Clash's debut album. It's that smooth. No rough edges anywhere. This compilation contains 3 other Gaucho songs, Babylon Sisters, Time Out of Mind, and Third World Man. And it took me a while to come around to those 3 songs because they were kind of boring, I guess. They were that smooth, but I like them. I don't love them. I've never skipped over them. They're okay. Here's a fun fact. Every time I hear Gaucho, for you oldsters out there, the first thing I think of is the Burry cookies. called gauchos. They were very popular in the 60s and the 70s, and then I think like 80 or 81, they disappeared. Basically, they were peanut butter cookies. They were these cookies that had a peanut butter filling, and there was a hole in the middle of each cookie, and they were really good.
Sounds
and
good.
Burry also made the Mr. Chips cookies, and they were just really, really good cookies. Don't know what happened.
Hey, maybe our episode's the thing that brings them back. Yeah, right.
Not gonna
But
happen.
it would be fun. Okay, so overall, I enjoyed Steely Dan more than I thought I would, but I can also see why yacht rock gets made fun of. Their beats are very chill and good for turning off your brain, but I like to engage with my music a little bit more, and I can't say I'd save this to my Spotify. I wouldn't be mad if this came on in your car, but the music would end, the moment would pass, and I wouldn't complain.
Well, you don't have to worry because, I mean, I guess the only yacht rock I really have would be this and Fleetwood Mac. And I think that's
about it.
Probably kind of it. Yeah, all in all, Showbiz Kids, the Steely Dan story, 1972 and 1980, is a solid 2-disc set. I wholeheartedly recommend it. But if 33 songs is too much, check out Steely Dan, the Definitive Collection. 16 tracks, most of the ones we've gone over are on this disc. As for yacht rock, really, it's just repurposed 70s soft rock. However, I highly recommend you check out the history of yacht rock on YouTube because if you're of a certain age, it is hysterical. Hollywood Steve's introduction in episode 3 makes the whole series worthwhile. It is priceless. And you've got to check it out.
On that note, as always, thank you for listening to the latest installment of My Dad Listens to This. Like, comment, subscribe, and all that jazz. Remember, the more you interact with the video, the greater chance we have of being seen on the YouTube homepage. If you follow me on social media, I post the episodes there. If you're friends with my dad, just tell him what episode you want to listen to, and he'll email it right to your inbox. And as always, if you appreciate what we do, feel free to leave a donation in the Ko-Fi tip jar. Thank you for listening to the latest installment of My Dad Listens to This. We'll be back next time with another album to pick and gripe about. Dad, anything you want to say before we sign off?
If the yacht is a rockin', call the Ghost Guard.